Okay. Let's start. See to it that you're in a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Whatever you brought with you today, maybe you have emotional content, maybe there's a situation, whatever thought process you're in, or any ideas of what this meditation session should do for you, just for a few moments, just leave that. And instead of being in the mind's identity, see if you can just see what this moment is. Just recognize what is here. You don't really dismiss anything. You just look at the experience instead of the content. So you recognize the experience of the body. And if there is lingering emotional content, you just notice how it is experienced, instead of trying to interpret it or fix it or whatever you usually do. You're just here with it. If thoughts come, just allow them to come. But instead of going with your mind, trying to fix your mind, trying to fix yourself, try to get rid of things and all these patterns that you might have, you just look at what is here now. So instead of just going with the mind, you are aware of the mind. You are aware of the content of your experience. Everyone can recognize this observing quality. It's just that most people are drawn into the content of their experience. But if you recognize the experience, it's very easy to stay here. Just try it, see what it does with your experience. And this is not a trick or a quick fix. This is an approach to your experience that is different than perhaps your normal, identified approach. To just look, to just see what it is, to be with the present moment as it is. Very practical, very simple. And for some of you, you might immediately come to a very spacious place. Perhaps you can still feel the poking and prodding the thoughts and emotions do to want you to join in. But you just stay. You just see what this space is. For a few minutes, just allow it. And the content of the experience might try to pull you in all kinds of directions. And you just notice that pull. You notice that some thoughts might come that seem a little bit magnetic even in their pull. Others, quite easy to observe. You're not inventing a new strategy here. You're just coming back to being. You're breaking the old patterns of repeatedly going and identifying with thoughts, emotions, and the content of the body. And by constantly staying here, perceiving the moment, instead of doing it, something in you shifts. This gap, this spaciousness, is the ground of your being. Everything you perceive comes out of this. Most of us are so taken by the mind, so taken by the content and emotions of our experience, that we almost automatically just goes into them, continuing our patterns. And I assume that you have come here because that is not working for you. That it doesn't create a harmonious environment. That is the first recognition, the first honesty. And a big question to ask. What is this experience? Why don't I feel satisfied with my experience? And in this recognizing of the present moment, the body becomes much more prominent. As soon as you have the alertness of noticing your experience, there will be much more in contact with the experience of the body. This is a natural thing that happens. Because since you recognize thinking won't take that much space. And the more quiet the thoughts become, the more prominent the experience of the body is. you might recognize your patterns here, that if you don't like the emotional content of the body, you might be prone to go to your thoughts or try to escape the present moment. And this is where meditation can be a little bit challenging, because what you're used to avoiding, now you're just staying here. And even though you might be uncomfortable at first, this is a much healthier way of relating to your experience. And it won't take long when you recognize your emotions for them to be expressed and to settle. They might come time and time again, but if you're observing them, they're already starting to fade. Just stay alert and see what is here. You can slowly open your eyes, move your body a little bit, move your hands, stretch out your legs if you need to. Many people ask me, I hear your instructions in meditation, but I don't understand what to do. I have people who listen to me many times and they still ask this question. And for the mind, it seems a little bit complicated, because I don't really give you instructions. If you cannot focus at all, I give you the instruction to recognize your breath. That is the most doing I ever recommend. And maybe do a mantra if you have very busy mind and difficulties with just coming to this space. But the important thing initially is just to recognize what is it to be present in this moment. What is that quality? And the problem with recognizing that is that awareness itself is not a quality, is not something tangible. You cannot grab awareness. You cannot hold it. It cannot be yours. It just is. That is the naturalness of it. And when you recognize, and I think many of you experience this spaciousness when I guide in meditation. The mind becomes spacious, there's some space, you can be easy to recognize thinking in it, and sometimes it might also just be quiet. That space is more like the flavor of the awareness. And also, the deeper you go and the more spacious it gets, you will notice that the expression of love is also coming naturally from that. The sense of contentment, the sense of peace, all these deep emotions that most people so desperately look from the outside, is recognized from this awareness. And many people say, yes, it comes sometimes, and then it goes again. Like something that is flickering, something that comes in and out of the experience. So it feels like another phenomena that just comes and goes. That is because the recognition of it is the flavors of it, or the scent of it. And those you associate with. And this is a very, very normal path for meditators to go, to also try to recreate that sense. So if you notice it under certain conditions, many people try to copy those conditions. They say, oh, I sense it when I go to Ashtanga Yoga Shala to the meditation, and there's always candles and it seems very serene. I try to create that space at home, and that can be helpful, but it cannot only be in that. You have to start to recognize that this is an aspect of your nature. This is something very natural in you. And as soon as that is recognized and starts to be, you have some sense that it's just a normal state that comes. In the beginning, it can feel like magic. And you can romanticize it because it's so lovely to just be, and for a moment you just feel, oh, it's like an out-breath of just staying in that moment. But the more you get to be with it, the more it is just a normal thing. And it doesn't, you don't want it that much. It can just be allowed to happen. And in that naturalness of that, you give up because many people feel like they want to grab hold of it when it comes. They want to deepen it. And so many people have asked me, okay, when it comes, I can sense it a little bit. How do I deepen it? That is the instinct of most. You just want more of it. But the problem with all these actions that are identified and that you want this state keeps it away. So if you get too much in that, you sit in your meditation and you really want the peace to come, and it will never come in that. It will be so absent. It will be gone. And the moment you give up and say, okay, I sit one more time, but it's not happening anymore, and you give up, and it comes. Because that is its quality. It's not something you can push around with the mind. It's not something you can do like that. It will just come. And the more you are in the recognition of that, the more you will let go in that. And you can just allow it to come. You understand that you are not a doer of your meditation. You are not a bringer of it. You can just invite it. That is the basis of the first step in meditation, to invite that. And to most people, that step is quite big, because it goes from the idea of yourself as a doer to yourself as just the allower of the experience, just allowing it to happen. And most of us have so much automatic doing in us that we keep this space from almost never get to be a part of our experience. So at first, there will be some effort, because you have to stay with it. And the mind will say, no. It will resist it, because it's so used to, the ego is so used to having all your attention and just feeding you thoughts, emotions, things, and you continue them. You identify with them, and you follow whatever the mind says. So when you stop that, the ego just has this momentum of just wanting to have this hold on you. So it will have some resistance. It will have its mechanical ways of feeding you the same old things. And when you start to observe them, you will see how they slowly fade. If they are deep patterns, it can take a while, but it will be easier and easier, because every time it will feel like it's weaker, that the mind's grip is weaker. But this is what creates spaciousness in the mind. And there are many ideas of what makes the mind silent. If you go online and just look into different meditation, all of them say that your mind will be silent. And many of the techniques that are presented makes your mind silent temporary. And after trying many different techniques, I at some point started to feel, but what makes the mind silent permanently? What practices makes the mind really quiet? And not that if I do this practice many hours a day, the mind can be held in place. If you do mantras all day and you do all these rigorous practices, your mind can become very, very quiet. But if the source of that those thoughts are not dealt with, as soon as you stop, if you go home from that ashram or from that retreat, the mind, it feels like it comes back. All the old habits start to live again. So I got very curious about what makes the mind quiet permanently, because some practices seem to do that. And I noticed that all the practices that had to deal with the root of the problem, that with the identification, with the idea of I, has that quality. The closer to the source of it. And most people, if you look at it as a tree, most people start to deal with the leaves. The most surface things, they say things like, I want to think more positive, so I try to have a more positive outlook on life. I try to cut back on things that I don't like. This very, very surface level. And they also work only in the context that you uphold something. That you uphold this practice, that you're all the time trying, you strategize with things. And then there is one level deeper, and that is when you start to do like practices like this surface level, like a mantra meditation, and you just quiet the mind. They go a little bit deeper, but as long as there is no awareness of the I, they will have just very little effect. And it's very easy that they go back. And then you start to come to the trunk and the root of the tree. And this is when you start to look at what is the source of all thoughts. And that's why sometimes Vedanta is said to be so advanced, because it goes into that domain. When we start to look at awareness itself and start to recognizing it, it is actually that we start to recognize the deepest aspect of our nature. In the beginning, it feels like a phenomena that you are sitting as a meditator, looking, and there is spaciousness from the point of view of the person. But that spaciousness at some point shows you that you are not the person. You are the spaciousness itself. And as soon as you start to touch this, the ego can fall like that. It can just be temporary, like a phenomenon. This is very, very common for most meditators, that it happens for a while and it can be identified again. But that in that domain, and even if the ego just falls for a moment, it creates a lot of space, because you no longer have the strong belief that the idea of I is solid. For most people, the identified idea of a person, it just feels like a solid thing. If someone would ask you, who are you? I'm this body, I'm this personality, I do this and this in my life, I work with that and that. All those things, that is the completely identified state. And when you start to experience that spaciousness, you will be a bit more hesitant. You might still say that to people. I do this at work, I'm the body, I do this, I'm someone's daughter or son, I'm this and this. But there's something in you that has recognized that that image is not as solid as you believed. And that is also a big shift. Because then there is openness to be with that spaciousness. And for some people, or for many people, it is a bit frightening in that spaciousness, because we have so much comfort in the idea of our person. And meditation, I'm not going to sugarcoat meditation. Meditation will challenge that. That is for sure. And that won't always be nice. If you think that you're just going to be one of those white-dressed people on the beach looking happy all the time of your meditation, that is not how it works. The work in meditation is just to be with what is. And sometimes that is very, very challenging. Sometimes it's lovely, spacious, and it can be spacious and lovely for a long time. And then you can start to feel like, the things that are under the surface now, they're really going to come up. Because as soon as the mind gets some space, all your old tendencies, they will rise. And that is that aspect that most people say, my meditation was nice for 3 months, but now it's terrible. I just want to run away. I don't want to sit anymore. Because you get confronted with those suppressed fears, things that have not been dealt with, that needs to be expressed. But the beauty of that they come up is that if you don't react to them and make another drama with them, or try to deal with them too much through the intellect, if you just allow the crap to come up and let go of it, there is a lot of space. So the practice initially is absolutely the hardest, because after a while the mind will just be spacious naturally. So you will just be waiting for the bus, and the beauty of awareness is just there, shining. You just look at this moment, you just look at everything. You can look at the pavement or whatever it is, and it's beautiful. It makes everything precious. Because as soon as the whole identified structure of time goes, then the present moment is precious and beautiful. This is our natural state, but it's just covered by so much identity of the mind, so many ideas of where we're heading, where we've been, what we are, all this. But we are just the space of the present. And the more you examine it, the more you will see that he's not a bullshitter, that Markus guy. And I sometimes say, I don't just want you to take my word for it. I want you to try it. I know these words can be soothing and calming and feel nice, and it feels like a nice idea to keep in your mind and just like, oh, meditation is beautiful. But it is so much better if you just experience it. If you just stay with the moment as it is, even when you're uncomfortable, even when you had a rotten day, you just look, you see what it is. Oh, I feel sticky all over. The emotions feels like this, and I feel like running away. I feel like just doing something else than being here, and just staying with that. See what it is. What is these overwhelming emotions that you absolutely cannot stay with? See what they are, and they will very quickly change. They will very quickly subside. All the emotions and all the thought content that we resist or hold on to, they stick. But if we just allow the natural pace of things, there is so much space in it. Otherwise, we have to live all those identified thoughts. That is what is referred to in Vedanta as karma. It is the continuation of actions because you identify with thoughts. And it's not the scoreboard idea that many people have of karma. It's just a continuation of thought. The effect of that you have identified with something, and that creates more actions in your life. And it is not that you won't do things. It's just that when you're not identified with them, there's so much more pleasurable to do. Even if you have to hurry or do something, a challenging task, it becomes so much easier without the identification of the task. Then you can just enjoy, you just observe yourself performing the task that is happening. It's night and day. But many of us also do through the identified thoughts, we do things always with an identified purpose. Do you understand what I mean by that? That we want to get something out of it that is like a personal gain, to show our own self-worth, to make others like us, whatever it could be, that are those identified. And you might, even if you don't have that, you can still do work. You still need money to buy food and pay your rent and do all these things. But the layer of identification makes it so much more complicated, and often for people very difficult to say no to certain situations, or just sense themselves if they push themselves too hard, because they're so desperate in their identity, so they always push the go button. They just go. So all these things just makes life so much more pleasant. I almost said easier, but that is not really true. And I want to be honest with you with that, because society is also not built on meditative principles. Everyone else that you will encounter almost will see the egoic structure as normal. And if you start to deviate from that, some people will be upset with you because they think that you should be stressed in a certain moment where you don't care. And you are acceptant and you're pleasant in modes where other people are off balance and they can dislike you for that or envy you or all these things. So it's not automatically easier, but your life is much more pleasant. And something else that is helpful is just to be open to what is beneficial in meditation can be things that you wouldn't expect. And like, for example, a crisis can be super beneficial for being present. Because suddenly you have to look at the moment as it is. You might see it in your life that I had this thing and it was very hard on me and all that. And all the identified parts with it can be very, very difficult. But if you look at it, you see that you have to look at things as they are. And if you encountered things that shows very prominently that everything in this world is transient, everything is coming and going, that is a great thing to have with you, because the less you put in the idea that things in the external should be permanent, the better you're off. Understand that everything is transient, everything is changeful. You cannot, if you place your stability in the external, you will always be disappointed with that experience. And the more you can come to recognizing awareness and notice that that space is permanent, that is permanent beingness, the now is not going anywhere. Even if the body goes, that beingness is still the same. That is the primordial force of everything, the ground of everything. And the more you withdraw from putting your identity in external things and all your stability in it, the more in alignment with what is you will be. The easier it will be to accept the present moment. And I understand that the things that I'm talking about now is not super easy to digest, but I think it's very important to hear them. And when you practice for a while, you will start to notice things, and you start to notice, oh, I'm really, like, my stability is really dependent on others or a specific person or a context or whatever it might be. And you can enjoy that person or that context, but in your heart, if you know that it is not permanent, there's also a preciousness to it because of that. Because many people believe, for example, they meet someone, they have a relationship with them, it's very stable, and it feels like, and they say to each other, we're going to be together forever. and that can be the intention, but if one of them would die from a disease, or at some point something will happen, and if all the stability is there, you have no peace. 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 You have no pe So the more you are in alignment with awareness, the easier it will be to cope with things. Things can still be devastating. It can be a big challenge if people close to you or loved ones pass. It's still challenging. It can still be a lot of sorrow. But if the stability is here, then it's much easier to go into all those feelings with love. You can just embrace everything in that. You have solid ground to stand on, if you can call awareness that. Groundless ground. But it creates so much stability to the experience because you don't believe that you are all these flickering things that come and go, or your stability lies in them. And it's a strange paradox how that unidentified recognition of your experience makes your relationships and the experience itself, in a way, much more intimate. Because the identified idea of the person actually makes you not being able to connect with people that well. Because that idea of a person always have an agenda, always have an idea of what I'm going to get out of this. You cannot just be with the person. And perhaps most of you have recognized in some moment that you are with the person and there is only the present. And this is a very, very beautiful way of being with someone, because you can really see them as they are, not your romanticized picture of them or idea of them, or your tired idea of them, or whatever it could be. They can just be allowed to be as they are. And this is the same. If that happens inside, you can see the same tendencies and you just feel loved. You're not, oh, now I'm doing this again. That does not have to happen. You can just stay with it and see, oh, this tendency is happening again. Oh, I'm looking for attention again, or I want this recognition, or I want this love, or I want this kind of something, material gain, whatever it is. And the beauty of looking inside is that the inside would always reflect the outside. It is not true the other way around. You can fix the external world in a very magnificent way. It can look beautiful. You have a beautiful home. Everything around you looks gorgeous and lovely. But inside, you feel dissatisfied, restless, worried. This is very common because you think that the external world is a reflection of you somehow. But if you look inside and you start to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and you start to be with what is, that will reflect in everything. And it will affect people around you in ways that you never thought were possible. And we have to understand that our experience is very much, they're so subjective that all your fears and all your views and all your ideas, they get projected onto your experience. So you will say, when you start to recognize the beingness, that people around you have changed, but they are not changing. You're just stopping your projections going onto them. And when they start to feel safe with you, they can change completely. And it can be very, very surprising. But, and I also just want to say, don't go into meditation hoping that people will change around you. That is not how it's going to happen. Is there any questions today? Yes.
So I don't really know how to ask this question, maybe, but I'll try. So I was thinking about the attachments, not like to people or relationships, but the attachment to your ego, and how that can, because I know when I doing the meditations or when you're talking, my ego can be like, no, I don't like that. And I can feel like the resistance inside me very much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not a question, but if you can explain a little bit about the attachment to the ego.
Yes. The ego is, if we're going to be very blunt about the ego, it's not really a thing, actually. It's not an entity. It's not your enemy. It's not something that you have to cleanse yourself of. Because the ego is just those mechanical repetition that just goes in circles. It just comes again and again. And its only hold, it feels like it has a hold on you, like it's some kind of entity that has a hold on you because of the repetition. But it's actually that's all it is. It's just this mechanical repetition. And it just, things that you identify with have worked. So it just tries them again. And your ego won't like me. It won't like what I have to say. At some point, it's almost 100% certain that you will be really provoked by me. I remember I was with one of my first teachers, and it felt like I was there on a retreat, and it felt like he had a long stick and was just poking my shoulder, like, like he was really out to get me, because that is how the ego feels. It feels like, and I talk about the ego very bluntly and very transparently, and I expose its tricks, and it lives almost completely in the dark. It lives in unconsciousness. So this direct awareness of it is not what the ego wants, because it cannot continue in that. I'm giving away all its secrets. So it will resist. And usually it takes some, because for most people, when they hear things like this, if they just feel like everything in their life is very comfortable, they will just say, no, I don't like this. I don't like this egoless talk. I just want to stay as I am and be comfortable and feel safe, and I want to be with that. But if your life has been shook in some way, if you have had some crisis, if you have a challenging time just being very sensitive and relating to the world, perhaps, all these things makes it much easier to go into this, because you understand that the identified state of the ego doesn't make my life nice. You feel how destructive it is. You have seen some of its mechanics. And when that has opened, there is a possibility for us to talk really. Then we can talk bluntly, we can talk about what this present moment is. And especially if you have just come a few times and listened to me, and I'm not sure how used you are to these kind of talks, but they will challenge you. And you have to look at things that are uncomfortable. You have to be with things that are uncomfortable, that the unconscious mind would say, "Oh no, this steps too far. It's too much. It's like this and this. This is why I have to go." So the ego just wants to continue. It wants its space. It wants to say things in your mind and you believe them. It wants to play you like it always does. It tells you to do one thing, and when that doesn't work out, it will say that was a bad idea. It just plays you, like it just changes opinions all the time. It can do all these things. But the more there is just awareness of it, then the grip will lessen. Then these thoughts that come poking, they will be less strong. And since you expose them like this, it's beautiful, because that loosens their grip. The ego would have preferred that you said nothing, and you felt a little bit irritated after the talk and went on the path of the ego and start to think about it and in the ego's terms. But since you expose it, that's beautiful. It's good. Because that loosens its grip. And that is the scary part, because that takes some trusting, something greater and all this. Yes, Rebecca wants to say something.
I was listening to something today about, I'm curious about the experience of being in the present moment and the sense of time, because I was hearing about a man who had some damage to the very center of his brain, and he lost his memories from a certain point. But it's like, in a way, you can lose the sense of I is so attached, is so related to time and memories. Like a lot of my thoughts are like from my past.
Yes. And it's very obvious with people, for example, who are dying. Many of them let go completely of the idea of time, because they have no future. It's obvious that there is no future. And some resist it, and then they get very, very fearful, and some let go, and then there's a lot of peace.
But what he also lost was he had this kind of constant, he couldn't make any new memories. So every few minutes he was back on zero. And it got me curious about how much is the sense of being with the present moment or awareness related to a sense of time, and that you almost kind of need the sense of time, because if you didn't have that, then you're just falling back on your habits.
Yes, but we're talking about two different things here. It's also the even though you stay with the present moment completely, and you understand that the future is fiction and the past is fiction, they are not real at all. but you still understand the concept of it. And if people talk with you past and future, you won't say, you can say something about it, but it's just what in your experience, what you believe that it is. Does the idea of future tell you something about your identity? That's all that it comes down to. Or the past. And this is so much, many people are obsessed with the past and the idea what has happened to them, and want to linger in that. And the ego becomes very attached to the idea of the person in the past and what has happened to it. But and there can be, I'm not saying that there is not trauma and there is not old things that come up, but they don't have to be dealt with in a timed manner. They come in the present moment, they want to be expressed, and then they go. You don't have to analyze it, you don't have to fix yourself, you don't have to pick up the different parts of it and try to put them together in a new configuration, or you don't have to do anything like that. Just allow it to go. Because the naturalness of everything is its transient nature. And it's not in an intellectual way, and not in an experiential way. And memories might still come of things, but they don't tell you about you. Time itself is not the problem. The problem is identification with time. Yes, what were you saying?
So with this guy, would it be like before this injury to his brain, he was still very identified with his ego, so then when he has this constant forgetting again and like dementia almost, it's like he's lost the opportunity to even remember to be present. It's not like he is just continually in the present moment, because it's just he keeps relapsing into a sense of self.
Probably he's very identified with this state, and there can be self-awareness of it, and he can be in despair, or he can be very, very challenged by it, of course. And notice that something, he can have the feeling all the time that something is wrong, or
not.
Yeah.
Okay.
But those are all identified. If he would be in complete acceptance of the present and this memory flickering that he has, he would be fine. It wouldn't be a problem. But if he's identified with it, and part of the human experience is that we can talk about these things. They can be recognized without talking. There are animals that have shown spiritual ways, but they have just connected to the silence, usually of a human, is not through the intellect. And in the same way, we can connect through that silence. If you meet someone that is silent, it's easy to connect with that, and you don't need words. It is not the most important thing, it's not the words. But for many people, that is the way of not resisting the silence. Because if there are no words, it's so easy for the mind just to take over and have an argument inside and say why it won't work for me. So when you can ask questions, it's of course helpful, and you can have an understanding of it, and you can question parts. Do the things that I do in my life really make me happy? What is this experience? What is the present moment? All these questions can be really helpful. But they're not needed as such. Just be with the present moment as it is. as the experience is. That's all that is needed. But for most people, that is too little. Or just be with someone who is silent. It just requires some maturity to be able to feel like that is an invitation, and that is obviously what I'm where I'm being.
Thank you.
Thank you. The mind will treat meditation as a philosophical thing. I think it's almost unavoidable. It will treat it like an idea, and it will ponder over the idea like, am I going to accept this idea, or am I not going to accept this idea? What the ego does not know is that it's not real. And that the reality in it is unavoidable. Whatever the ego's position is. But it cannot uphold its falsehood by the idea of being that. Being of choiceless nature, being of individual nature, all these. But as you will notice, if you stay as beingness, you will notice that it is not a thing that I produce. It is not a choice of the mind. It is just beingness itself. It doesn't come through choosing. Because if you would choose it, then you would just say, oh, there is some spaciousness. I just choose to always be spacious. But as soon as the identity is involved, that won't work. You won't be able to go there. And I know, because I've been asked it so many times, how do I go there? And some even say, can you draw me a map? Can you show me like 10 steps how to be with the present moment? And I say, no, I cannot do that, because it's a ridiculous map. It would just be one point, or I don't know how to draw that. Because you're not on a spiritual journey. You're just discovering that you're not the one walking. There is no traveler on this journey. That is what you recognize in it. And you're not going anywhere. That is also the ego's fantasy of what the spiritual search is. And people say things, I've been on this journey for 20 years and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you say so. But the quality of spirituality is that it is available all the time, and it is here. So where are you going? And why can it not be allowed to just be here? It doesn't take any effort. It's actually the opposite. It's just refraining from effort. Can you follow that? It's all your trying that makes it not be here. Or that you say, I am not worthy. I'm not worthy of all that love and light and beauty of the present. If you encounter it, it's very normal to have that sense. Wow, this is too much. I am the source of love? Ooh. This scares many people. If you think initially that it's scary with the fears of things, when the light comes, that is the scary part. Because it just takes everything else away. It will say, there's only this. It consumes everything. You cannot hold on to anything. You will just be. And you see the beauty of it, and the ego is like, no. It does everything to resist that. Because who can take it? Who can just allow that? It feels so right to allow shame and guilt and grief and anger and all these things. They're fine. But that you are the light of this experience. Many people feel it's too much. But it's also that quality that makes life precious. And even if you would say, I don't care for this spiritual search anymore, I have given it up, you are still under the same laws of nature as everyone else. If you believe in your thoughts, you will suffer them, you will create karma, and you can just continue doing that. Or you will look for contentment and peace in the external for a while, until you realize, okay, this is not working. It will always draw you back to that. And it's also just a question of what I call doors. For some, the door is through inquiry. Asking questions about happiness, asking the question, who am I? Trying to find the source. And for another, the door is to give yourself to the whole and to see what happens when you do that fully. Is there anyone left to be given? Yes, it was what we call Bhakti Yoga, or the path of Bhakti and devotion. And in India it's very popular. Here, not so much, because many people find it very religious, that path. Like Christianity is like a Bhakti Yoga path. Everything is about love for Jesus, of Christ, all this, and Christ consciousness, and being with that. It's not so much of the mind. It's not questioning the mind like that. It's just devotional part. And whatever you feel inclined to, if you want to give yourself to the universe, to life itself, whatever. And many people feel naturally this, but I just noticed that in Sweden and in the West, people have more difficulty with that part. But the path of the intellect and the path of the devotion, they meet at some point, because you have to trust. So it's just a question how it comes into your life. And I've seen beautiful things with people who are very intellectually driven and people who are very heart driven, very devotional. And when they meet, they can just enrich each other so much, because the one who has a devotional disposition is usually very trusting with people, and they get in trouble with things like that. They just want to devote their life so much, and it is like their natural spiritual path, but it gets projected onto a partner or family, and then they just burn themselves out in the external, because they just want to help everyone. It just feels right somehow. And when that gets directed as in devotional energy, it instead comes back. You start to notice that you are, what you feel devoted to is you. So there is no other in that sense. Like many of the religions, at least on the surface, they have that view that you are an individual and you give yourself to God or whatever. But what the experience of it shows is that there is no difference between who you give to and yourself. And this is very beautiful, because then the devotional part, then you can do your little ceremonies, or you can allow that to be expressed, but it doesn't get entangled in all this external stuff. It stays within, and the expression can be very pure in that. I wrote a text quite recently that I called The Door of Devotion, and maybe some of you have seen it. I posted it on Instagram and Facebook. So if you have me there, you can look it up. It's one of the latest things I posted. And it's just about the expression of that devotional path. Because I have noticed also the spiritual seekers that feel inclined to be devotional, they can feel very, very lost in our culture. They can be the most marginalized of all the spiritual seekers, because many other, like the tantric path, is very open in our society. The Vedanta, there is some possibility of going, but the devotional part is difficult, and also has groups that are prone to exploit people that are very devotional, which is terrible. So it is very important to recognize that. And that's why I have here that we sing bhajans and that we do some things with that are not just like a philosophical expression, that is also just with heart. And kirtan, yes, kirtan is lovely for that. So if you feel drawn to those things and feel like you don't have that expression, you can just explore it by coming to kirtan, or do those kind of practices. It's a very good combination with satsang. I would very much recommend that.
I have like religious conflict.
Yes.
I have a religious conflict because I was brought up Christian. And then there is the first commandment that you shouldn't have another God by the side. Ja.
Yes.
Du ska inte ha en annan gud vid sidan av. And it's just it's fun. It's fun that I'm because I've been very explorative spiritually in different religions and very interested in it, but I still feel like that has some hold on me.
Yes.
Which is, it's not so serious, but it's interesting. And that's like a resistance of going to a kirtan. Maybe because it doesn't feel like my natural devotive space.
But if we're going to talk about not having other gods, then what? There is...
Yeah, I know.
There
I'm
is no
I'm
different expressions.
Exactly, I agree with that. And I recognize God as one force of beingness in everything, basically.
Yes.
And that it's just an intellectual part of the ego that still attacks me sometimes with that part from being brought up Christian.
Yes.
I think it's very strong.
Yes, and if you've been brought up from a young age, those things can also be ingrained in a way that feels that's not at all with this adult intellect, has nothing to do with it. It just comes as feeling. I also meditated with had some sessions with a man who was brought up in a very, very strict Christian upbringing. And what was moving in him when we were meditating was, I'm going to go to hell. I'm going to go to hell. He just, that was what he had to deal with. Yes. Yeah.
But maybe I should try Kirtan and just challenge this.
Yes. Yes.
At least in Ashtanga, it's also the same thing, that you say that it's one practice, one teacher, no doctor.
Mm.
So that's how you make people stick with.
Mm.
And to me, to open up for Kirtan and meditation and Hatha Yoga has been a big step.
Yes.
So it's also within this field.
Yes.
And probably many others.
Yes.
We find ways to scare people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a good way of also checking if you're with some group and you cannot question. If it's not allowed to question things, then leave. If you cannot ask certain questions, if it's just like completely cut off, then leave.
I've had that speak when spoken to and so on.
Yes. So, I enjoy my I have a guru in India, if you don't know, and he's very beautiful in that way that he allowed all questions. And you could notice sometimes, especially people talking about drugs very positively. He had big difficulties with that. He didn't like that at all. But he can be very honest, but he allows everything. All the expressions can be there. He's not afraid of that he has to stop people. That happens, that they talk too much about something or take too much space. That is also allowed, but you could ask him anything. And I think that is a beautiful thing. And also that the practice is not anchored in just a lot of relative statements. And what I mean by that is that it's not rooted in dogma or in rules. I remember when I first came to my teacher, he always wears these orange robes, and I asked him, did you put down any vows to dress like this or to be a Swami? And he just looked at me. He just put his arm like this, looked at me and said, do you like rules? And I said, no, me neither. And then it was done. He had not promised to be celibate. He had not promised anything, nothing. He just wanted to dedicate his life to this. That's it. And that is also the greatest dedication, to go into a tradition and to do all the posterities and do ceremonies about it, and I have done such a big thing, a big fuss of my life is now like this. And then you're just on all the relative rules of that context and just trying to be as successful in that monastery or in that ashram as possible and go up in the ranks and be liked by a guru, or then it's just like a job. Like a politician, or then it's nothing to do with spirituality anymore. And I see that a lot. It has to be from freedom. It has to be voluntary. It has to be the feeling that you can leave at any time and never come again. That freedom has to be there. They shouldn't have a hold on you economically, or that your spiritual savior is that they're your spiritual savior, and if you don't go with them, you're fucked. It's not. None of those things should be there, and also that the teacher should not collect students. If you notice that the teacher just wants good students, that's also a good idea to leave. The teacher should want you to realize the same thing as the teacher has. And if the teacher seems to point in that direction, that is good. That's a good teacher. They're not envious of students that are very peaceful. If they have any of those tendencies, just leave. It should be voluntary, it should be freedom. Very important. There's so many ideas of spirituality. How you should do it, or what you shouldn't do, or if you should eat meat, or if you shouldn't eat meat, or so much nonsense on the surface. Live your life. See what actually makes a difference. What makes the mind quiet? What makes your life peaceful? Where do you really feel happy? And you will realize things that you have mistaken happiness for excitement. You think that every time you get excited about something, then that is your happiness. Many people live like that. And that you feel like perhaps contentment feels a bit, to feel content, what is that? But that goes so much deeper. And if you're so used to just chasing excitement, you might miss contentment, because it's not as interesting to the ego as excitement. But excitement is just a quite anxious state in time, that you're hoping for something. You have a feeling, now it's going to happen. Yes, that excited feeling is always in time. Contentment is here. And can you discern between those things? Can you understand that this contentment of the present moment is much more profound than this tiny excitement? But the surface level things seem very big in your experience. So it's very easy to be taken by them. And the more subtle experience is more subtle. So you might miss it, especially if the mind is filled with ideas and thoughts. That's why the quiet mind starts to notice all these things. It starts to recognize the present moment. Start to recognize the experience as it is. You start to recognize that through this awareness, the body will be much more prominent in your experience. These small things. And when you start to see it, you understand, oh, this is what yoga does. It keeps me anchored in the body, and that means anchored in the now. So that can help me, okay? I have to do that. Or whatever you practice. But the best thing is if your practice allows to come organically through your understanding. Not that some tradition have told you this is the way to do it, everyone has to do it. If you just recognize what is here and you're drawn to things, if you feel challenged by kirtan, yes, go to kirtan. Then it has the possibility to be great, especially if there's some fear involved. That is the best one. But it's so easy to, again, be very externalized with your practice and look for the perfect tradition. But you are the perfect tradition. If you start to look here instead, you will see what expressions come from you, and what this body might need or needs to be challenged, or all those things are there. But many of us lack confidence, so we think it's better to look outside, and it's easier and nicer if someone tells me. But if you look here, you will have all those expressions just shown to you. And it can just feel a bit scary. And I remembered also early on with the day that I really felt like Swami became my guru, I was going to another teacher and their Sangha and being interviewed for a job there. And I was thought, oh, I'm going to get a job there and I'm going to stay there. And I went to this interview, it went great, they liked me a lot, they offered me a job in this Sangha, in this ashram, and I could stay there for a long time. And when everything was done, I just felt, I don't want to go. Why don't I want to go? And I met Swami and I said, I don't know why I don't want to go to this ashram. And he said, but what do you want with your practice? And I said, yes, I would like to meditate a lot. They say it's quite a lot of work, so you didn't have much time to meditate, and you wouldn't be very close to the teacher because the ashram is very big and there's a lot of people. And I just noticed that I just said all the things that I didn't like with being there, and that all the things that I wanted, like meditating a lot, being close to the teacher, I already had with staying with Swami. I just saw him as inferior because he was a much less famous teacher. He has just a small group, and I just realized, what am I doing? I've been given everything I want, but I'm still looking elsewhere. The grass is still greener somewhere else. And in that moment, I just realized that my teacher is sitting in front of me, the most beautiful silent being, and I can just talk with him about anything, have my meals with him, and just be in the ashram. So from that day, it became his student. And then his attitude towards me, he noticed when I was all in. So then he started to challenge me much more and ask me questions and ask me to do things and all these things that were very beautiful, because then he noticed I was all in. So it's so easy to be taken by the mind, to go somewhere else and to think that. But the most important is that he just pointed my question back at me and said, what do you want? What do you want with your practice? What do you long for? Oh, I long for this devotion. I don't know how it's going to be expressed. Or I long for being by myself, but I have such a rich social life. People wouldn't like it if I start to withdraw. Or you can, whatever it is. But it's usually very clear, because if it comes from you and the expression is there, and it is this longing that doesn't have a nice intellectual grown-up explanation, it just longs. That is the one you should follow. And at first we're so taken by the mind that we usually listen to all the things that it suggests. So it's very difficult to listen to that longing. But there is a deep longing in everyone for peace, to be happy, that has nothing to do with what is the smartest strategy right now in my life, that the grown-up mind really wants to have a hold on. But if you allow that, there is so much playful expression in that, and there are also so many challenges in that, because it just goes for freedom. And to the grown-up mind, that is crazy sometimes. But it's also very, very beautiful. So let's sing to Radha, Sri Radha. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe. May everyone find peace. May everyone find their true nature. this awareness that is you. That holds the whole of consciousness, the whole experience, full of all its things, and at the same time complete emptiness, complete spaciousness of being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you. And I forgot to introduce you to the group today, you're online, so you get to say goodbye to everyone instead.